Hey there, I am D. During the War of the Worlds, there was a ship that was considered to be the largest ever built and deemed unsinkable, called the Titan. And wouldn't you know it, though unsinkable, upon striking an iceberg, it sank anyway. Now I know what some of you are thinking. Don't I mean the Titanic? And wasn't the War of the Worlds released 14 years before the Titanic? The answer to the latter is yes. But as for the former, no. Believe it or not, in the year 1898, a man named Morgan Robertson wrote a story entitled The Wreck of the Titan. And as you can imagine, the similarities between the two are staggering. So naturally, I thought to myself, wow, this is a book I should read. And now that I have, why won't I talk about it? Yeah, again, it's a public domain novel, so I thought, why not just download it from the internet rather than buying myself a physical copy? She was the largest craft afloat and the greatest of the works of men. Didn't I say so? With 9 compartments flooded, the ship would still float, and as no known accident of the sea could possibly fill this many, the steamship Titan was considered practically unsinkable. Again, sounding familiar? Containing within her steel walls all that tends to minimize the dangers and discomforts of the Atlantic voyage. 8 tugs dragged the great mast to midstream and pointed her nose down the river. Then the pilot on the bridge spoke a word or two. The first officer blew a short blast on the whistle and turned a lever. The tugs gathered in their lines and drew off, down in the bowels of the ship. 3 small engines were started, opening the throttles on 3 large ones. 3 propellers began to revolve and... isn't there supposed to be a story it should be telling? You know, something that's happening to humans, animals if you have to, but more than just what the ship is doing? 50 feet below her deck, in an inferno of noise and heat and light and shadow, coal passers wheeled the picked fuel from the bunkers to the fire. I realize a book is supposed to build up atmosphere, but at the rate this is going... On deck, sailors set the triangular sails on the 2 masts to add their propulsions to the momentum of the record break. Some paced the deck, acquiring their sea legs. Others listened to the orchestra in the music room or read or wrote in the library.
Yeah. Please, stop. Come on.
Davits and stanchions, men never mind the rail, said the boatswain. Ladies, better move your chairs back a little. Roland, climb down out of that, you'll be overboard. Finally, the story starts. His gaze rested on one, a sunny-haired young woman with the blue of the sea in her eyes, who had arisen at his approach. He started, turned aside as if to avoid her, and raising his hand in an embarrassed half-salute, passed on. An obvious love story. I'd make a joke about it, but considering that this came about before the actual ship, I think it unfair to compare it to a movie that didn't come about until 100 years later, so... John Rowland is here! Lieutenant Rowland! I've just seen him! He is so changed, he tried to speak to me! Who? That troublesome flame of yours? I've always been afraid of him. I've met him 3 times since then, and he put such a frightful look in his eyes. And he was so violent and headstrong, and so terribly angry that time. He accused me of leading him on, and playing with him. Okay, maybe I should compare it. I mean, James Cameron's movie tells a cliché love story. But here, they even address harassment, possibly rape. I liked him at first, until I found out that he was an atheist. Why, George, he actually denied the existence of God, and to me, a professing Christian. He never seemed the same after that, she resumed. I felt as though in the presence of something unclean. Love thy neighbour, but only if they're the same as you. He said that much as he valued my good opinion, he would not be a hypocrite to gain it, and that he would be honest with himself and others, and express his honest unbelief. The idea! As though one could be honest without God's help. Wonder if she'd still be saying that if these people were born back then. Something ahead, sir. Can't make it out. Only 17 pages out of 107 in, and already an iceberg? That's quick. Then, in the darkness to starboard and port, two darker shapes shot by, the two halves of the ship she had cut through. False alarm. When Roland entered, the captain seated at a desk motioned him to a chair and asked his name. John Roland, he answered. The captain wrote it down. Notice how, so far, only one character has actually been referred to by name. Therefore, he's the only character of consequence, ergo, we already know that he's gonna survive this disaster. Well done, Robertson. Just keeping us at the edge of our seats. I understand, he said, that you were in the crow's nest when this unfortunate collision occurred. You are aware, of course, that nothing could be done, either to avert this terrible calamity or to save the life afterward. Nothing at the speed of 25 knots an hour in a thick fog, sir. The captain glanced sharply at Roland and frowned. You will find, when you are paid at Liverpool, a package addressed to you at the company's office containing £100 in banknotes. This you will receive for your silence in regard to this collision, the reporting of which would embarrass the company and help no one. A good thing the captain always goes down with the ship. A little girl ran into the enclosure, laughing and screaming, and clung to his legs, while she jumped up and down in an overflow of spirits. I want away, she said. I want away from Mama. Drying his wet hands on his trousers, Roland lifted the tot and said tenderly, Well, little one, you must run back to Mama. You're in bad company. How much are you willing to bet that this girl belongs to that woman from before? At that instant, a young woman appeared around the corner. She sprang towards Roland like a tigress, snatched the child. 10 minutes later, the captain, in his office, was listening to a complaint from a very excited man and woman. And you say, Colonel, said the captain, that this man Roland is an old enemy? He is, or was once, a rejected admirer of Miss Selfridge. That is all I know of him, except that he was hinted at revenge. My wife is certain of what she saw, and I think the man should be confined. This love story, if I should call it that, gets more interesting every second. Especially after the ship's already gone. A boat with the number 24 on her bow was making for the southern lane, and crouched in the stern sheets of this boat was a moaning, praying woman who cried and screamed at intervals for husband and baby. One of the brass-buttoned officers assured her that her child was safe in the care of John Roland. Awkward. He did not tell her, of course, that Roland had hailed from the berg as she lay unconscious, and that if he still had the child, it was with him there, deserted. As much as this makes the story more interesting, is that even physically possible? Good morning, Mr. Selfridge, he said, scarcely looking up. I suppose you have come to see their insurance paid over. Their 60 days are up. Their underwriters are outside companies that have placed matters in my hands and will not pay until I take their initiative. I I thought this was supposed to be a adventure story, so why bring up insurances and such? Still, just because of the similarities between this and the existing ship, that makes for an interesting read. Can't say it's the best book I ever read, though. I mean, like I said, it was quite predictable. Just because there was only one character who actually had a name, you could pretty much guess who was gonna survive. And the fact that it's an old book shouldn't even be an excuse. I mean, even H.G. Wells had better justification for not naming all of his characters. The names don't even have to be meaningful. They may well be simple names like Eric or Bruce or even Dexter. Just make characters seem more interesting than they really are, just so to make the story less predictable. This was D. I'm signing off.